get started here. So first things first, let's have everybody, sorry about that. Let's have everybody post in the chat where you're tuning in from. We like to see where our participants are from and recognize that. So we've got Chandler, Sholo, Phoenix, Mesa, Levine Village, Tucson, Phoenix, Missouri. Oh, I got Missouri again. Hopi Reservation, excellent. Sholo, Tucson, Prescott Valley, Tucson, Phoenix, Scottsdale, Sedona.
I'll have to hit up some of my Tucson people here when I'm down there.
Yeah. Peoria. Again, if you're just joining, please post in the chat where you're tuning in from. I'd like to see where we got everybody coming in, and especially if you're tuning in from out of state or even out of country, please post that. We like to know when we have other states and other countries join us. So excellent. Thank you for sharing that. We got another Phoenix coming in. Got Diana from Scottsdale. Thank you, Diana Valls, for being here. All right. So we're going to jump in today. We've got another great session planned for you. So I'm your host, Robert Theobald. I'm the Small Business Ombudsman and Vice President of Small Business Services at the Arizona Commerce Authority. And I want to welcome you here today. One of the things we like to do as we start these off is to thank all of our community partners. We could not do these webinars and workshops without their time, their effort, and their expertise. For those that are new, the Small Business Bootcamp is designed to help prepare, plan, and grow for small businesses. We host the bootcamp every Tuesday morning, 9 a.m., but we also do other webinars and workshops as part of this program. And we'll talk about some of those here a little bit later in the presentation. But a key part of the bootcamp is our content library. We record all of our sessions and we post them in the content library. So those that can't make it live can go back and review it, or if you watch it live and you want to review the information, you can go watch it again. And then we also include the slide decks with that recording. So if you want to download a slide deck, once we post it up, you can go in and grab the slide deck from there. We also include some of our workshops in the content library and our other webinars. So a lot of great resources. You can see there's well over 250. There's more than 300 at this point in there. And so you can see on the side of the screen there, there's 7 categories you can sort by to find the information you might be looking for. The ACA also has a number of other programs to help support small businesses. We have a Career Readiness Credential, the Arizona Innovation Challenge, our Arizona MEP, our Manufacturing Extension Partnership, the Arizona State Trade Expansion Program for our businesses in Arizona that are looking to export your goods and services. Arizona at Work has programs for employers. And then our Small Business Services team that I oversee, we have a number of different programs beyond just the boot camp that we provide to help support small businesses. One of those key programs that we'd like to share here is the Small Business Checklist. You can scan that QR code and it'll take you to it along with our virtual assistant, Sally. But our Small Business Checklist is designed to help small business owners or those looking to start a business or existing businesses identify the licensing, registration, and compliance needs and requirements at the local, state, and federal level. You can also find other information, as it mentions there, and contacts through that checklist. It's a very in-depth resource available to you. There's no cost for it. You just have to give it your time to go in there and find the information. It's an amazing tool. So with that, we want to jump in and share some updates. So FinCEN, which is part of the Treasury Department, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, has enacted a new rule that started on January 1st called the Beneficial Ownership Information. And it's part of the CTA, the Corporate Transparency Act. And so we are doing a special session tomorrow. I'll give you more details on that. But this is a new ruling that requires every business, just about every business, to report ownership information And so the website, we're going to post the website for FinCEN in the chat. They have a very good website with a lot of information on the FAQs, but we are also doing a webinar on it tomorrow. Also, we're going to post up some links to some great small business funding and tax information in the chat as you're wrapping up your taxes. There's some information you may need to know to help take care of that. And then for any of our lawyer friends or accounting professionals out there, on January 22nd, we're going to be releasing a solicitation for participating or for qualified vendors for our state small business credit initiative technical assistance programming. So if you want to be part of that and potentially provide that technical assistance to small businesses, take a look at that notification when it comes out. So let's look at our upcoming sessions real quick before we jump into today's. We've got next Tuesday is our part 3 of how to implement your growth plan. The following week is small business big impact, a blueprint for e-commerce marketplace success. We're really going to focus on e-commerce leveraging Amazon and Walmart marketplaces. And then with all the wonderful sessions we've had on marketing, all the marketing is great, but if you can't sell, close the sale once they reach out to you, then you don't get those sales. So we've got a little sales piece talking about using persuasive language to help take action. So we got a great group of sessions coming up we're excited about. And then this week is a busy week. We've got today's workshop or today's webinar. And then tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., we have a special session on that beneficial ownership information that I was mentioning. So you can go onto the website and register for that. We'll also be recording it. And then on Thursday at noon, we're doing a lunch and learn workshop, virtual workshop with the Arizona Department of Revenue on common TPT errors and how to avoid them. And this is important because some of those errors can actually create fines that you'll have to pay. We want to help you avoid any of those fines that may come up, but help everybody understand TPT and some of the taxes that small businesses may face. And so hopefully you can join us for those. That's this week. But with that, we're all here for today's session with our friend Nicole Zeno from Clever Cow Media. As you see her there, Nicole is Phoenix Business Journal's 40 Under 40. And she's an awesome friend of the Commerce Authority and friend of small businesses around the state. So Nicole, I'm going to stop sharing and turn the time over to you. If you have questions about in today's presentation, everybody, please post them in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. That way we can track those questions and make sure we try to get them answered if you have time. But Nicole, it is all yours.
Awesome. Can you see my screen, Robert?
Yep, looks good.
Awesome. Well, excited to have you guys back. Hopefully you have gone through the workbook. You have answered your questions. You have your data ready, because today we're going to do a lot of the work that takes to build a growth plan. So as you guys already know, and for the people who are new here, my name is Nicole Zeno. I am an award-winning serial entrepreneur, consultant, marketer, and public speaker. I was named 40 Under 40 by Phoenix Business Journal and Top 100 Marketing Leader. I've spoken on all sorts of stages, but my main passion is about small business, startups. And if anyone was here last week, you know my biggest mission right now is making sure that small businesses are in a proactive state and not a reactive state. So what does that mean? That means planning for your growth so that you can know that all the activities you're doing, all of the money you're investing, all the time you're investing is actually getting you to your end goal. There are a lot of activities to do out there. And so we want to make sure that we are doing the ones that are getting us the most bang for our buck, right? We know that small business owners and startup owners, they do not have an unlimited checkbook. They do not have unlimited resources, and they do not have unlimited time by any means. So we want to make sure that you're able to go to bed at night, sleep well, know that the activities you're doing in the morning are going to get you closer to your goal, and closer to growth. So with that, just a quick recap of where we're at with this 3-part series. So last week, we really talked about the discovery phase. And I know that this felt a little, this could feel sometimes a little bit like monotonous, a little bit like we've done this before, right? We answered a lot of questions that maybe you have answered in the past, or you should have maybe answered in the past. But really what we were doing was collecting the data, collecting the historical data, making sure that we're in the right place, coming back to our foundation, coming back to our, safe spot in our business, our mission, our why, and all of the historical data to back that up, so that today we can come into this really strong and we can start building a plan. And so today will be a lot more step by step. You will also have those pieces in that document that we sent out. I'll send out another email when that's ready, and you guys can kind of walk through that workbook. We're calling it a workbook light. It's not our full workbook, but it is what we will go over today. And so by the end of today, you will know how to build the plan that you need to kind of get to that next level. And then next week, we are talking about implementation and review. So none of this works without all 3 sections. You can plan all you want, but if you don't implement, you're not going to see the results. You can implement all you want, but if you don't plan, you're probably not going to see the results as well. And so you need to have all 3 parts. So I like to maybe reference this to like cooking a steak, right? You guys can go to the supermarket, buy a steak, find a recipe, cook it up. It'll probably be pretty decent, right? But then you go to a restaurant and pay a lot of money for a steak, but from a trained chef, and you're like, oh, it's like I've never eaten steak before, right? Sometimes at least. This is the same thing here. This is where the magic happens, right? And so what our plan at Clever Cow is we're teaching you our proprietary methods, our methods that we have spent years putting together, so that you can come in and either say, here's my plan, let me see some results so that I can grow to the point where I either can bring in an expert or I can learn to be an expert, right? And so this is where that magic's going to happen. I don't expect all of you to leave here and be me or be my team, but with that being said, you're going to get a plan that's going to allow you to start seeing growth results. And that's the biggest spot that is missing in the marketing growth space for businesses who are SMBs, right? Marketers are generally marketing agencies are expensive to bring in, or they do not get you to the spot where you need to in order to bring them in, right? We are going to get you there. So with that said, you guys now have all this data. I'm going to assume you all did your homework. You have all the answers to the questions. You have the data, because we are implementers here, right? We are not spectators in our own business. We are coming to these panels, to these educational sessions, so that we can implement them in our business. So you guys have all your data. What do you do with it now? So this is, as many of you know, I host a show called What the Frack. It's where we are your fractional executives in your business. And one thing that we wanted to do when we started the show was come up with what we call the situation report. This is what, by the end of this, you're going to be able to have to use to make decisions in your business moving forward, right? There's going to be this, you're going to have the marketing success document, which is the document we've been filling out. And I'll show you how to go through each of these pieces. But basically what this is an overview of your business, where it stands, but where it wants to go. And each of these pieces are going to be filled in throughout this process. So we have things like our outcomes. What are the desired outcomes? What are the bad outcomes we want to avoid? What are the challenges we may have as we go through this? Touch points to your buyers. Who are your buyers? what is the overall plan of attack that we want. And so I actually have this template for you guys. I'll send that out at the end, but at the end of the day, you want to be able to come to here with any decision. Let's say a new trend pops up or any of these pieces, and you want to be able to come here and say yes or no, this fits into our plan. So with that being said, I'm going to jump into a few definitions. A few definitions of some marketing definitions, because marketers like to use words that maybe have slightly different definitions, or they're using them in different ways. So this is the way we're going to use them throughout this presentation. So a goal is going to be your big picture description of where you want to be. KPI is going to be how you will measure success on that goal. A timeline will be when you will evaluate your success. So how long is it going to be before you evaluate your success? And a blocker is going to be a task or a goal that has to happen before others can begin. So you'll see these terms. I'm going to use them throughout this first half of this presentation. Just remember that these are kind of the definitions that we're playing by today. All right, so the first step is we're going to list our goals. So this is going to be where we're going to sit down and we're going to write down all the items that are different between the where you want to be and the where you are now sections of your discovery, right? So you've already gone through, you've done this discovery. We're going to write all of these down. Now, remember, these are going to be big picture. They may be vague. They may be things like increase revenue or $500,000 in revenue this year, or hire a new person, or bring on new users, right? Like these are going to be vague pieces. For each of them, you're going to add a priority level. So low, medium, high, or urgent. And so low is going to be not necessarily that it's not important. It just means that it needs to happen at some point. Medium is going to be, well, maybe not just some point, it needs to happen in the near future. High is going to be, it needs to happen this quarter. And urgent is going to be, it needs to happen or nothing else can happen. From there, you're going to include how this goal will impact your company. It's going to be a short little explanation. I want $500,000 in revenue this year in order to bring in that money, hire new people, and expand our operation. Or we need 200 new users this year in order to validate our product and to get new sponsorship onto our piece, right? Just a quick explanation of what these goals are. This list can be long, and it probably is going to be long, so don't worry, but it could be 20, 25, 30 items on this list. Write everything down that you're going to get you from where you want to be, or where you are now, to where you want to be. From there, I don't know why my images aren't showing up, so sorry about that, but from there, we are going to notate any blockers. So any of these tasks are blockers, meaning I cannot do this, I cannot do another task until this task is done, right? So for instance, if I have a YouTube channel and I want to, or a podcast, and I want to sell sponsorship to my podcast, well, I could spend a lot of time going after sponsors who are just going to tell me that I need listeners first, or I need followers or subscribers first. So I really should focus on subscribers or followers before I go after sponsorship, right? So getting subscribers would be a blocker to getting sponsorship. So we're going to notate any of those blockers. We're also going to notate if it's top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom of funnel, brand, or any other category. So what does this mean? Top of funnel is really any of the pieces that are going to get leads or people through your touch points. They're the first touch points that anyone's going to see you in. Middle of funnel is how are you nurturing? How are you getting people to see your product and think through your product? Bottom of funnel is the actual conversion of them buying your product. Brand is going to be brand recognition, right? Do they know who you are? Have they built trust? Do they see trust with you, right? And then any other category. So maybe it's updates, maintenance, website, things like that need to be categorized. And you'll see why this is really important in the next phase here. But this is going to be extremely important because we want to make sure that we are not just focusing on one part of your funnel, right? So if all of our goals are top of funnel and your main goal is going to be to get revenue, well, you could put as many people into the top of your funnel as you want, but if you have an issue with conversion rate, you're not going to get that revenue. So we want to make sure that we are seeing a few tops of funnels, middles, bottoms. We want to make sure we're hitting customers at the entire buying journey. And then you're going to notate resources or any other information that would be important to know when you're executing that goal. So do you need to hire someone? Will you need to bring in an expert? Do you need an investment, right? So let's say part of your goals are around doing events. You're going to need a location for your event, right? Just kind of notating these things. And it doesn't have to be in the weeds yet. We are going to go from the big picture all the way down to the weeds. And right now we're kind of in between. So don't get too far into the weeds, but definitely notate that these things are part of that goal. So what does this look like exactly? So this is going to look like something like this. And all of these tables that I'm going to show you today are going to be in that document, so you can go in and fill them out. But this should look like this. You should have a goal. You should have your priority. Is it a blocker? What's the funnel? And what's the explanation? So for instance, maybe you have, I want 1,000 followers on Instagram. It's kind of a low goal because it's going to happen. You have to do it, but it's not an urgent. There's no blockers to that, but it's a top of funnel activity. And the bigger the community, the better engagement we'll have. And that will translate into sales, hopefully, right? If you're hitting the right community. So this is where that should look at this point. So now we have a list of 25, 30, 50 goals with all their priorities, their blockers, their funnel, and their explanation. So the big question, Nicole, I have 20 plus goals now. You're telling me I need to focus on 20 things? No, I'm not telling you that. The theme for this year is going to be focus. Allowing yourself to build that list will allow you to now prioritize that list, right? So now we're going to start picking focus. The great news is that let's say you overshoot your goal and you make all of your goals in the first quarter of 2024, right? It's possible. We can do that. Now we have other goals to pull in as stretch goals. But for right now, let's figure out our focus. So with that, man, I don't understand where my photos are, Robert. I'm so sorry here. With that, we're going to pick focus. So anything that's urgent is going to go straight to the top of the list. That is going to be things that are top of mind focus. Anything that's a blocker is also going to go to the top of the list. And anything you want the most valuable, basically what we're trying to do is figure out what is the most valuable tasks, the most valuable goals for the least amount of your work, right? So is there anything that's low-hanging fruit, anything that will give us the biggest bang without a ton of work, right? What are those pieces? From there, we're going to look at this list, and once we figured out all of our focuses, now we're going to start building KPIs. Basically, what we're going to say is, okay, we have this goal. Maybe we have a few goals that fit into the same kind of grouping that we can build a KPI around, right? So KPIs will allow us to break goals into actionable tasks. And I'll explain this in a second. This will narrow our focus even more and allow us to say no to any activity that doesn't get us closer to our goals. So let's say there's a viral sensation that's going on and we want to go, our marketing team or social media manager says, I want to spend all this time and effort and money on this. When we look back at our KPIs, does it hit our KPI? No. We say no, maybe we'll think about this another time. Maybe one does come in and it does fit into our KPIs, then we say yes, right? You're going to take each of these top goals and add a way to measure success. So remember, our goal is our big picture. our KPI is going to be how to measure success. So I'm going to go through this for a second because it's not as easy as just saying, all right, well, if we want more revenue, we want $500,000 in revenue, $500,000 is our KPI. It's a good goal, but it's not the best goal, right? So with that being said, good, better, best KPIs. So good KPI would be, I want more revenue. Great. We know where we're trying to go. Anything that doesn't bring us in more revenue, probably not an activity we want to do. But what would be a better KPI of that? A better one would be, we want to increase our revenue by 10%. Now we know not just what we want, but we know how much we want. But there's an even better way we can do this. What's the best KPI here? I want to increase our open opportunities by 20%. So let's say through all of the discovery we did on phase 1, we realized that every time we open an opportunity, 7 times out of 10, we close them. That brings in more revenue, right? So instead of saying, hey, I'm going to give my team this goal of more revenue, which they cannot control 100%, doesn't really give them a plan as to how we're going to hit more revenue, why, how much. It doesn't really give them anything. We'll say, okay, we know that if we open more opportunities, then we're going to see more revenue. Now they know that your team, whether you're a solopreneur or not, your team knows, okay, we need to focus on opening opportunities. Once we open opportunities, we will see more revenue. So this is why those are even better KPIs. This is also how you start grouping some of your goals together, is by these KPIs that maybe, okay, opening new revenue, new opportunities not only brings in more revenue, but it also gives us more data around who is looking for our product, so that maybe later on we can make a product for all the people who our product is not perfect for just yet, right? You're starting to building up groupings of your goals. So I'm going to go through another example here because I think this is a really important part of the planning, right? If you don't get your KPIs right, then that's where things can go a little bit awry, right? That's when you can say, here's my goal. I don't know how I'm going to implement it. And then Q4 comes and there's nothing to really be said. We have no answers as to why it didn't work, and those pieces. So this is a really important part here for you guys. So let's say you have an e-commerce site. We want more orders. Okay, that's good. We want to increase customers using the site. Okay, so we know that if we increase customers, we're going to get a certain conversion rates, right? So we want to increase customers using the site. That's better. We now know that there are certain activities we can do to increase people using the site versus the crazy amount of activities we can do to get more orders, correct? And there's other options here too, right? So we want more orders. The next step could be, we want to increase our conversion rate. This is all going to be where the customability of your plan comes into play. This is why I have a lot of issues with these buy a template, get my like $1 million funnel system, right? Because every company is slightly different and you need to know where to tweak it. So if you saw in your discovery data that you were getting a ton of traffic to your site, but the conversion rate wasn't working, then maybe instead of saying we want to increase traffic, maybe your next goal would be, we want to increase our conversion rate. So this is good. This is better, but what's the best way, right? Knowing that we convert 80% of our traffic into orders, we want to increase traffic by 20%. Now we have the amount we want to increase. We know that we want to keep our conversions at 80% or higher, and we want to increase that traffic. These are really specific terms now. Let's say we were on our conversion rate kick. Let's say that was the one we went for or better. We would want to decrease abandoned carts by 5%. Now we know we only should be focusing for this KPI on abandoned carts, right? So is this making a little bit of sense? I'm gonna have the chat open here for a second. Is this making sense to you guys? Let me know if I'm going a little too fast. Yes, no? Do we got any? All right, I see a yes, so I'm gonna assume yes. Awesome. Okay, good. Glad that this is making sense, because sometimes I feel like it only makes sense to me. All right, so with that being said, this should look something like this, right? So number one, we want to increase downloads by 33%. That is a top of funnel action. What's our KPI, right? 6,000 downloads, which would be 2,000 a month, 66 a day. This one was actually built for a quarter. So that's why you're seeing it broken down into month and day. And then the little bit of explanation. So for the first 3 quarters, our downloads have been primarily fueled by ads with a slow increase in organic. By implementing the newsletter, you could see. So you can see where we're explaining through our data from our discovery why this goal is important, which funnel, and how are we going to measure success. So we're starting to really get down into the weeds. You could see how we went from discovery, very big picture goal, KPI is even smaller, right? I like to plan, so just a few key notes here. I like to plan for the entire year and then each quarter break it down from there. So get an overview picture of what the year looks like, our goals and KPIs for the year, and then break the next section down each quarter by quarter, because with small businesses, you guys know this, things change on a dime and you have to be able to pivot. So I'd hate for you guys to do a ton of work and then realize that we have to pivot, right? But up until this point, you can break these KPIs and goals down over the year, over the quarter, and you can even break them down over the month. So you're probably asking, how many KPIs should I have and how should I pick these KPIs, right? We have this list of over 20 goals. How do I pick which ones to KPI? So at any given time, I like to be somewhere between 3 and 6 KPIs. Generally, the way that we try to pick them is if we have a client that is looking at the whole user cycle, then we say, okay, 1 top of funnel, 1 middle funnel, 1 at bottom of funnel, 1 brand, and 1 optional, right? So maybe the optional is something that, okay, yes, we're looking at the whole buyer journey, but really we want top of funnel is our main concern. Maybe that optional is a second top of funnel. It also depends on what phase your company is in. So if you are in a phase where in 2024, you're only looking at proof of concept, you're not even caring as much about revenue, and 2025 is going to be revenue year, then maybe bottom of funnel you're not doing, right? So you're really thinking through, how can I take the most impactful 3 to 6? And when I say 3 to 6, it could be because if you have 3 KPIs or 3 goals that are really major, it's going to be a lot of work to do. You're not going to be able to handle 6, right? Or if you have maybe 1 or 2 KPIs that's a little bit easier to do, or you know you're going to accomplish pretty quickly in the year, you're going to want 6. This doesn't mean that when you finish, you can't go pull from that other list of 20 to bring something new in. It just means at any given time, you are not focusing on more than 3 to 6 KPIs. And if you're focusing on less than 3, then you're probably not doing enough work towards your growth goal. And that's fine. If you would want to stay where you are and not grow, then you can focus on less than 3. But if you're really serious about growth, I find that 3 is the minimum that you're going to want to focus on and that you can handle. Okay, so from there, so we had discovery, we had goals, we had KPIs. Now we're getting really down into the weeds and we're going to start building campaigns. So campaigns are going to be for each KPI, you're going to brainstorm the campaigns you can run to hit that goal. So remember to consult your buyer persona. So where are your buyers who are going to hit that goal? Where are they getting their media? Where are they consuming their advertising? Always include a time frame. data to back up your assumption or blockers. So once again, is there a blocker in running this campaign? How long are you going to run it for? Is there evidence to prove that this could be a successful campaign for you? And don't forget that some campaigns can be tests. So if you don't have evidence, you have assumptions. What's the test that you're going to run that's going to cost the least amount, take the least amount of effort, and that you're going to know is a test? At the end, what does success look like for that test? And if you hit success, what's the next step? Right? So we're going to start now breaking each of these KPIs into campaigns that are going to get us to the overall goal. So once again, we've been talking about this from the big down to the weeds, right? But if you go the opposite way, what we're basically building is that every activity we do in the weeds will now start to funnel up to the big goal. So everything should be pushing us towards that big goal. So just a few definitions here to make sure that we understand what we're talking about, a few more definitions. So a campaign is going to be a group of marketing tasks that have a common theme / success. And we'll go through what a campaign document looks like in a second. Activities are going to be, these are the tasks you will complete during your campaign. And the tactics are going to be a generalized marketing activities to get you closer to your goal. So for instance, a campaign might be, okay, we want to run the small business boot camp, right? Our campaign will be getting experts to talk to small businesses and get them in the door and get them on our newsletter list so that they can expand their reach, right? The activities are going to be, hey, you probably get the emails from Faith, right? Every time we have a new one, we get emails. Emails are going to be our activities. Social is going to be our activities. Going to events and shaking hands and kissing babies, that's activities, right? And the tactics will be things like social media, community building, right? These are tactics. The one thing I don't want you to forget is that there are always maintenance campaigns. So things that you're going to do throughout the year that are not getting you towards your goals, but they're not directly related to a goal, right? So these are going to be things like ongoing campaigns and marketing activities, right? These are going to be general newsletters, things like product improvement, web updates. Now, if they are specific to a goal, you're still going to include them under that goal. If they are specific to the overall overarching umbrella, like these are things we need to do to run the company, then these are going to be your maintenance campaigns. So this is also the reason why we only focus on 3 to 6 at a time, because you're going to also have to do maintenance campaigns. So you want to make sure that you have both of these kind of written out so that when you're delegating resources, you're doing project management, you're trying to figure out how much time, energy, investment you need, maintenance campaigns do not fall by the wayside, because that's going to put you into a reactive mode once again when we realize, oh shoot, we have to do these campaigns, right? So we don't want to be in that reactive mode. So what does this look like? So let's say we took number 5, one of our goals, number 5, increase brand reach by 66%, right? That was our number 5 goal. We have a KPI for it. Some of these campaigns might look like YouTube ads or thought leadership content. What's that status or timeline? That could say in progress. That can say we're not going to do this till October. You start building out that timeline and giving an explanation, right? So once again, we're going to break this down one more step further into a campaign document. But for right now, what's the explanation as to why we think this is going to get us to the goal? And we like to, I know that this feels like we're adding a little bit extra work for you guys. But the reason we like to do this is because when you get too close to a plan, you sometimes forget why we're putting campaigns in there, right? So we want to make sure we always have an explanation that's backing up by our data from the discovery round, by our buyer personas, by the fact that we can handle these campaigns, right? And how do we know it's going to work? Now, just because we have data doesn't mean it's actually going to work, but at least we can go into the activities knowing that we're doing it with the best information we have. And sometimes it's still going to be an educated guess, right? Also, let's face it, throughout a year, there are going to be so many decisions that you are going to make throughout a year in a business. There's going to be so many small things that are going to come up that maybe you bring on a partner. Maybe someone asks you, why are we doing this campaign, right? When you're in your review sessions, you're like, why did we put this into the plan? Having the documentation as to what your reasoning was at that time can bring back the thought of, okay, I understand why we're doing this. Oh, we've gotten a little far off of our goal, right? It allows us to explain to our team why we're heading in this direction. And next year, when we're starting to do our discovery all over again, we'll be able to see if we've hit our goal. Okay, from there, we're going to build campaign documents. So the other reason for the explanation, and I'm just going to go back for a second here. If you can see on the thought leadership content there, you see a list like how-to videos, question videos, PR, right? We're kind of building out, taking it out of our brain. Us as entrepreneurs, as business owners, we tend to leave things in our brain, and that causes a lot of stress on a day-to-day basis. Are we going to forget it? Are we hitting our goal? I like to get it out of my brain onto a document. And what's going to happen is, up until this point, we are going to plan all this for the year. Once you've gone through this piece, the next step, these campaign documents, you can actually either only do the campaign documents for the campaigns you're going to run this quarter, or you could do for the entire year, right? And so what happens is, let's say we only want to do the campaign documents for this quarter. Then when we come back for next quarter, we'll already have some of the stuff that's in our head on paper. We don't forget it. We don't stress about it. So what's a campaign document? So a campaign document now is, we're going to take each and every one of these campaigns and we're going to break it into the nitty gritty. These are going to be your one-off tasks that you're either going to delegate, you're going to do yourself, you're going to hire for, whatever that looks like, these are your tasks. And this is almost the beginning of like first step for project management software. Basically, when we talk next week about implementation, this is the stuff you're going to put into your project management software. So this is the final step of in the weeds, right? These are each individual tasks. Once again, like I said, these do not have to be all done at once. I think for each client, we do it slightly differently. For some clients where we know things aren't going to change too much throughout the year, we do all the campaign documents. This way we know what resources we need, what budgeting we need, what investment we need, all of the pieces, and we get it into the project management software to make sure we're on task. For small businesses, a lot of times it would be a lot of work to do all the campaign documents up front, only to have to change them as the year goes on and have to pivot. So we like to do it quarterly by quarterly. And then these will understand, like I said, all those resources you need, when you need them. You know, very often we get asked like, great, we need to hire someone for this position, but when, right? When should I start hiring? And that's what this is going to kind of tell you. So what do these look like? I'm actually going to jump out of this document for a second to show you exactly what this would look like. Just give me 1 second here. Okay, can you still see my screen now? Is that a yes?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. All right. So basically what a campaign document is going to be its own little space for your task to happen, right? So we're going to go through things like, what's the campaign name? Is there associated goal, to make sure that we're not just doing tasks? Once again, we're not doing campaigns that are not associated to goals. Who's the team members, what's the date and the timeline? Remember, everything should have a timeline on it. And we should not be pivoting before the timeline's open, right? Like before the timeline ends, right? These timelines should be set in stone. Is there budget that needs to happen? What's the purpose, opportunity, and target? These are really good too if you have investors or you have team members or board members where you have to explain why we're doing certain tasks. Marketing, most often, the best marketing does not happen overnight. It takes 6 months for a campaign to really start digging its heels in, right? And so sometimes when you have investors or board members, you have to explain why, what's the purpose, what's the opportunity, what's the target. From there, you're going to start kind of building out your messaging that's approved, especially if you're working with a marketing company or a team. You want to make sure there's approved messaging that then they can take back and do all their assets with. And then you're going to kind of start building out your deliverables. What are the activities you're doing and what tasks do you need to make those activities happen? So instead of just saying we're going to do a social media campaign, now we say we're going to do a social media campaign and here are the 5 posts that we want to do. We want to do an introduction post. We want to do a reel. We want to do 5 podcasts, right? Like now you start breaking it down into tasks, and you can add reference so that the entire team. So let's say you have people who are working on different campaigns. You have different team members working on different campaigns. They can just come in here and have all the information they need, including some reference and results to build it out. So every campaign is going to have a campaign document that's going to have all your tasks in it. So I'm going to go back now. Hold on. Oh, there we go. All right. So I know that this sounds like a lot, but once it's done, it is a little bit of upfront commitment and work, but once it's done, you will definitely feel a relief, right? Because now you know the exact task you need to get to the goal, and you know that the work and time you're putting in is actually going to get you there. So from there, before we commit 100% to this plan, we need to look over the plan and ask ourselves some questions. So should I push some goals, right? Is this too much for me to take on? Should I push some of these goals to next year, next quarter, 2 years? Do I need to hire? Can I hire? Do I have enough capital or resources for this? And then my favorite question, can I handle the growth? So let's say everything goes perfect and you have the success you want to see. Can you actually handle the growth that you're planning for? And this is a piece that we see a lot where we want to see the growth, we want to see the numbers, we plan for all these things. And then once the growth happens, the infrastructure of the company or the amount of people working at the company cannot handle that growth. So these are all things we want to make sure. Do I have enough resources to complete this, right? Like these are all the questions we want to ask before we commit to a plan. From there, once we commit, I want rules, right? Just like many of the popular like health programs out there. I know that in January, we're seeing lots of posts about, hard 75 or 75 hard, like all of these different health programs, paleo, you can only eat this, or restrictive eating, you're going to fast, right? We need to have rules. We need to set those ground rules now, because you don't want to be making these rules when the things happen. So when will you review these? We personally like to go quarterly. This gives us enough time to make sure there's data, make sure our team is feels comfortable putting out these marketing campaigns. It gives us enough time to look at if it's working or not. But you can review it every half a year. You can review it once a year. When will you review these? When will you pivot? So maybe something is not working. One of the biggest mistakes I see is that people, business owners, they generally like to pivot really early. And they pivot right before all of the great success of all your work is happening. And so what's happening is they're constantly pivoting and they're not seeing the success. And so now they say marketing doesn't work for our company, which is just not a true statement, right? So when will you pivot? How will you know when to pivot? So let's say the rule is we're going to review it every quarter. We're going to notate all of the things that aren't working. We're going to give it one more quarter. And if we see it 2 quarters in the row not working, then we're going to pivot. Who is your RACI? So this is another exercise that I won't go into too much right here because we don't have time. But a RACI chart is essentially figuring out who on your team is responsible, actionable, consulted, and informed, right? So with every type of decision, who is responsible for that decision? Or for every type of task or department, who's responsible for it? Who has to do the actionable tasks? Who should be consulted and who is just informed? So knowing, okay, we want to pivot, if we want to pivot and we see it 2 quarters in a row happen, now do we just pivot or do we have to inform or consult someone else on our team before we pivot, right? Who is your races? What should you do in that tough situation? You know, maybe it's even talking to the board or talking to an unbiased third party, right? These are all pieces that you can kind of create rules around. And then how much money / resources will we invest? This is the one that small businesses very often do not think about. They kind of just go as it comes, right? So, oh, we want to do an event. Oh, we need some new swag. Oh, we need this. And they're kind of like, okay, can I afford it right now? Instead, what we should be thinking about is, okay, here is our marketing budget for the year. How much can we invest? How much money or resources can we put towards these campaigns? And then if we hit that number, let's say it's ads and we hit that number, what do we do to review whether we want to put more in or less in, right? So really going through what are the rules of engagement for your campaigns. So as you can see, we now pretty much have all of the data to fill in this situation report. We have all of the discovery data you guys had last week. We have all of the strategy, tactics, and touch points from this week. We now have the big picture, we have the middle ground, and we have the in the weeds. And these should be the things, you should have your situation report, you should have your buyer personas, you have your MSP, your marketing success plan document with KPIs and the discovery information in it. And you're going to have your campaign documents. You have everything you have set up to now implement, which is what we're going to talk about next week, which is just as important. So please don't think that just because you have this stuff now, we're good. We need to still implement, and we need to implement it in an efficient way, because if I'm you sitting there right now, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I have so many documents I have to go through. How do we implement that? So please join us next week for the how to implement your growth plan, where we're going to actually teach you how to go from a plan to implementation. And I just want to kind of throw my hat out there in the ring. So like I said, everyone here is going to have the tools necessary to get a decent plan. If you want more of an expert plan, if you're feeling overwhelmed by that, we have products and services that can help you, including our What the Frack show, which comes out every Thursday and Saturday. We also have products that are going to be 25% off. And if you guys, we have 2 more spots for our mastermind, which actually builds this for you guys and with you guys. We have 2 more spots now. We're closing it off till Q2. So if you want the 25% off, but you want to do Q2, let me know. I will put you on the wait list and I'll honor the 25% off. But for now, hope you guys found some value, and let's see if we have any questions.
All righty, thank you, Nicole. So if you can place your questions in the Q&A, so don't lose them in the chat. But we do have a couple in the chat that I saw, so I want to come back to. He says, is there any way to get a copy of the campaign document template? Is that in the workbook?
Yeah, so when I'll send out another email like I did last week with all the links to the things I said I would give you, and it'll have a campaign document template in there.
And then it says, where do you indicate who is responsible and when the task should be completed?
Yeah, so there is so 2 ways. One, that kind of comes into implementation. So either you can add a column in the document to add that, or kind of notate it in the explanation. But once we implement it into like a project management software or any sort of list, including a Google Sheet or an Excel sheet, there will be a column for assigned and the due dates. So that kind of comes a little more in implementation.
Excellent. It doesn't look like we have any other questions in the Q&A or in the chat. So we got a few minutes left. If you have those, please drop them in. We're glad to take the time. We got another few minutes left, but again, great presentation. And if you missed last week's, that's okay. It's recorded. You can go into the content library and view that. We're also going to add all the documents, even though Nicole's going to send out the email with the documents, the links. We're going to include versions of those with the recordings in the content library, so you can rewatch them or download them there as well. So you'll have access to get all that information. So you can go through the information from the first presentation, this one, and be prepared on next week's for how to implement it. But Nicole, with that, we don't have any other questions, so we will go ahead and wrap up and give everybody a couple minutes left their day. And we appreciate your presentation and you taking the time to do this 3-part series with us to kick off the year. Again, we hope everybody can join us next Tuesday, but we also have our special sessions and lunch and learn workshops this week. We hope you can make it to. Again, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. is our beneficial ownership information, the Corporate Transparency Act requirements that went into effect on January 1st. We'll talk about those tomorrow morning. And then on Thursday is our lunch and learn with the Arizona Department of Revenue with their education team. So it's a great learning opportunity and a great way to find out where all the information is related to Department of Revenue. So please join us for those. Until then, have a great week, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining.